Welcome to the Pursue Your Spark podcast. We bring you the best tips and solutions in fitness and nutrition to lead a healthy lifestyle. This is the podcast that shows you how you can unlock your potential and why it matters to ignite the spark in your life. And now your host, Heike Yates. Well, hello there, and welcome to episode 21 of the Pursue Your Spark podcast. I'm your host, Heike Yates, and today I'm talking to my good friend, Cherie Morris from Dear Divorce Coach. Today's episode is about separation and divorce and how to deal with this so stressful time in our life. I remember the time when I went through my own divorce and how stressful it was. Thinking back, I must have not been happy in my marriage and didn't even know it. When I decided to get divorced, I was not prepared for the financial and emotional consequences my decision would entail. But I didn't know anybody that could support me or point me in the right direction to make better decisions or even prevent the divorce from happening. There are many professionals that help us with legal advice, but someone who knows the ropes and through their objective thinking can help us decide what might be the right strategy for each one of us. So what better person to ask than Cherie, because Cherie has made it her mission to help other women and men through the difficult times in a separation or divorce. Cherie is a certified divorce coach, lawyer, yoga teacher, published author, and mother. She believes it is very important to understand and analyze each decision in a divorce carefully and rationally, but with a strong consideration for your best self and a relationship that might continue with a former spouse well into the future, especially when kids are involved. Even if you're not thinking about a separation or divorce, this episode is still for you because Cherie is sharing her so juicy 5 tips to protect your marriage and what you can do to make your relationship healthier and happier. I can't wait to share this episode with you. Are you ready to dive in? Welcome to the Pursue Your Spark podcast. I am so excited, guys. I have my good friend Cherie Morris here today from Dear Divorce Coach. Now, she says she's a lawyer and a mother by training. Sounds a little bit familiar to many of us, doesn't it? And she is in midlife. She is divorced, and she is now, I call it managing 5 children, 4 of her own, and plus an additional one from her current partner. And she's also become, her passion and her profession has become writing and teaching, coaching people through divorces. So I want to welcome Cherie and tell us more about yourself.
I would love to, Heike. First of all, thanks for having me. I know we've known each other for a long time. I think when we thought about it, it was actually since about 2001. And I know both of us have seen lots of changes in our lives since then. My kids are growing up. I still have 2 at home and my partner's daughter as well. So always something going on around here. In addition, I transitioned what was practice of law, not in the family law arena, to a full-time writing position with a writing partner. We wrote a novel called Desperate in DC that was really about our lives in this town. And after that time, I knew I wanted to have the experience of working with people based on my own divorce. So I started exploring how I could do that. And it was really the experience that I think many people in particular, I know you support a lot of women, so I'm happy to kind of address how I work with women. And I found that although I had a good lawyer, a very good legal professional, a good therapist, even a good realtor and financial planner, what I was missing was that very practical side of things in divorce. How do I communicate with my soon-to-be ex? If you have a partner that doesn't make that easy, doesn't make co-parenting easy, what's the right approach? What's the right approach for dealing with your kids and how to share the news of divorce? And and parenting them at each of their different stages. So I found a training for divorce coaching, and because I was already a lawyer, I brought my analytical framework to the process and started working with people, coaching them at every stage of divorce. And I added, in the last couple of years, an additional credential. So I'm also a parent coordinator. So in addition to doing coaching, I will help parents come up with custody solutions. How does it look? Who spends time with which parent when? What's in the best interest of the children? And how do they resolve some of those parenting disputes? So I now full-time support people in both of those important jobs.
Now, Dear Divorce Coach, it's such an endearing title. How did you come up with naming your new venture in business Dear Divorce Coach?
Well, thanks for asking, Heike. It's interesting because I spent a lot of time writing in my prior profession, actually more as an author even than as a lawyer. I always loved the idea of being an advice seeker and an advice giver. And I think that as we enter midlife, particularly as women, but also men, we look to people that we trust, to people that we know, to people that have more experience doing things than we do. So it was an inviting title in the sense that you're just reaching out to someone who might know a little bit more in this area than you, Dear Divorce Coach. And let me tell you what my situation is and what can you advise me to do.
You shared with me that you already had other published books on Amazon.
Yes. So in fact, I had written this novel with a friend, and Penelope Bell is a wonderful partner in so many ways. She was a neighbor. Our children grew up really together. And so we had written this novel called Desperate in DC, and it really...
Such a juicy book, by the way.
Yeah, well, it definitely does.
Ready to go get a copy of that. It's very juicy about Washington, D.C.
And it's still on Amazon, so people can read it. And it's, the idea was to make what can be difficult situations kind of funny and a little salacious. It's a great beach read, actually. So, yes, so thank you for mentioning that.
Perfect for this time of the year.
That's right, exactly.
But you mentioned you had another book that ties in directly with Dear Divorce Coach, also on Amazon.
That's right. And my experience, I think, writing the novel certainly informed my ability and knowledge of how I could contribute to other types of writing. And when I started my company, Dear Divorce Coach, I understood that people sometimes need a real practical guide. What should I do if I want to get divorced? What should I do if I've been served with a divorce complaint? So I wrote this book called Should I Stay or Should I Go? And it addresses with some specificity each category of contemplation in divorce. And the thing I love about it, I work with clients on a daily basis, many of whom know little to nothing about divorce, some of whom know a great deal. But each one of them has in turn come back to me and said, gosh, I didn't think about health insurance. I'm so glad you mentioned that in the book. I didn't think about the custody schedule for my kids, that it would be important perhaps to consider having consistent days of the week for my schedule, for their schedule. I didn't think about the emotional repercussions of divorce. I had looked at the business side, or conversely, I only looked at the business side. And I think for women in particular, the idea that you really need to understand your finances before you divorce is extraordinarily important.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because we both have gone through divorce. And one of my stories really is when I divorced, I did not think about it. I just walked into my husband's office and I said, I want a divorce. And I hadn't contemplated. And oftentimes people say, oh, there's another person, it's an affair or something. I just decided that I set aside many things. This is what I'm going to do. But lo and behold, I ended up with $300 a month to pay the rent, pay the food, clothe the kids. And I have, as you know, 2 kids. And I had not thought about the financial consequences that a divorce may bring. I was like, Heike is getting divorced. This is what she's going to do, like always. But then with $300, and I've told this story in The Art of Igniting Your Spark or other Facebook, social media, that my girlfriend actually invited us over for dinner to feed us because I could not afford food for the kids.
Yes.
And money is such a non-spoken issue when it comes to divorce. And so, but you got divorced too. And I think through your divorce, it led you to your divorce coach. Do you want to share some thoughts on that?
I sure can. And I really want to thank you for sharing your personal experience in divorce, because I think money is still, like sex, a taboo topic, right? Nobody wants to acknowledge it openly. And one of the things I think is so important is acknowledging both of those things. So there's no subject for me that's taboo. And I think, knowing you long enough, Heike, that's the case as well. And I love that about you. And I think if we can't be explicit about these things, then we're not well served in divorce. So for example, on the money side, I ask my clients very specifically whether they even understand or know, men and women, the universe of assets in the marriage, the budgets they follow. Do they manage the money? Do they know what the money is? And it's not to embarrass or humiliate or shame anyone. It's so that they can gain an understanding. Sometimes the right time to divorce is not the day you walk through the office and talk to me. Sometimes you need to plan for your finances, plan for the children, plan for your job. Yeah. All of these categories are really important. And yes, you're so right. Emotion drives divorce. And sometimes it's not even, I decide I'm angry with my husband or wife today and I'm going to divorce, but it's a slow drip over time. And then there's the straw that breaks the camel's back. So you think, well, I've thought about this for 10 years or 5 years or 5 minutes, but really that doesn't mean you've planned for it. So yeah. My push is to get people to plan, and they don't always have the luxury if they've been served with a complaint for divorce, but certainly I can point out the information they should seek right away.
So what do most women come to you first when they're in the transition of a separation or a divorce?
Yes. So I would say I see a combination of women in divorce, and some of them are I see more women now who are contemplating, and I'd like to think that's because the word is getting out, and not just about Dear Divorce Coach, although that would be lovely, but really about the idea that we need to be informed as women in particular. We often manage the children in the primary sense. We often manage the home in the primary sense, but still, even in this day and age, sometimes we aren't managing the money. So they come and say, what do I need to know? And then we can talk about that. I also see women who are really reeling from divorce. They're in a state of emotional chaos, shock, and frankly, sometimes Heike, denial. And because as we peel that onion and the layers are revealed, we find out that maybe they haven't had any physical intimacy, no sex in their marriage in 5 years. Certainly, no other kind of intimacy either. But they thought this was status quo. They're raising their children. They were friends or friendly, or sometimes not even that. But they really never thought they would get divorced. So we have a lot of work to do, especially in those cases, people who are surprised by divorce that in some ways maybe shouldn't be surprised. But I have to understand where they're coming from and their personality, and then begin to start working and walking that journey with them to coach them best, to give them the best practical advice.
Yeah. You said your yoga practice ties in also with your practice as a divorce coach. How do you tie that all in?
Thanks for reminding me. I forgot to mention, yes, in 2011, I became a certified yoga instructor as well. And I love the physical practice of yoga myself. But really, yoga is, and I'm sure you know this, Heike, better than most, it's really more about the mind. Everything leads back to mindfulness, and including, of course, all of the amazing physical training you do. So the way I use yoga sometimes is a physical expression. Sometimes I literally do yoga poses with clients. But the goal is to get them to a place where they can be mindful, whatever we're working on. So we do a lot of breath work. We do some work around, mantras if they need one. And I try to help them set aside even a few minutes, a couple of times a day, to spend time meditating. It really comes down to whatever tools they need to calm the chaos and overwhelm, I try to help them access.
Okay. And are they usually open to your suggestions?
That's another good question. It's funny. I meet lots of people in this practice, and I don't always approach it as this is a yoga thing or this is a mindful thing or that this is a coaching thing. I just give them support. And so it depends on the person. Some people are very resistant to, particular forms of either physical or mental activity. So usually we just talk generally about what they would need. And once they see something work, right, the proof is in the doing,
Yep.
then they will happily continue to practice mindfulness, whether they call it meditation or something else.
Yeah, because one of the things that I hear a lot in my Pursue Your Spark groups is now I'm getting older, I'm getting out of shape, I'm not looking like I used to, I don't see myself anymore when I look in the mirror. And then at times, and that may go for male or female parts, but it's now my husband's finding a younger woman.
Right.
It's the younger woman. She's much younger, she's sexier, she's in better shape than I am. But oftentimes we go through the perimenopause or the menopause, and we do get a little chunkier and not quite as juicy as we get older. But it's almost like many women, I hate to say that, blame the husband for choosing a younger, more spunkier woman over them. What is your experience in your practice? You are ready to change your life but lack confidence to take the first steps towards your fitness, nutrition, and lifestyle goals because you don't know where to start, or you understand the basic principles of a healthy lifestyle but you feel overwhelmed and need a step-by-step action plan to help you get started, or you feel like you're spinning in place and you're ready for a fitness lifestyle overhaul to achieve results that last. Does that sound familiar? Then you might like my 7 Days to Ignite Your Spark Planner. It's a 7-day accountability program where you take small but specific action steps each day so you feel confident and fearless in your life. Through those measurable steps, you will feel more energized, centered, and able to prioritize what is important in your life. The program is sent directly to your inbox once you pay, and you have instant access to the 7 Days to Ignite Your Spark Planner. The program includes a downloadable planner, 8 worksheets, a short daily video guiding you through each step, a daily motivational email from me, and exclusive access to a private Facebook group, daily Q&A, where I personally help you through the program and help you succeed. I will put a link in the show notes so you can get your hands on the 7 Days to Ignite Your Spark Planner.
Well, first of all, can I just say I love that term juicy. Maybe our goal as women in midlife we should always be juicy. So I love that, first of all. But yes, you're absolutely right. I think that really, in my coaching opinion, in my professional experience, men and women are not really going necessarily for a more physically attractive partner. And I suspect this is going to be very controversial, Heike.
I know, but we're out there. We're laying it out there. We're all there.
We're laying it out there. So I would say they might be going for a partner with whom they can connect. So if you have not maintained that connection, and by the way, I'm not blaming women or men. I'm saying if you in your relationship haven't maintained that connection, it's natural. It's the human tendency, the human condition to seek that. And so sometimes that happens. Is it the best way to enter midlife? Probably not. But the challenge is to back it up a little bit, figure out what's missing from your relationship soon enough so that you don't have the prospect of dealing with a third party. Mm-hmm. If you can catch it early enough. And when I hear you say, we have these challenges as women midlife, and I know you coach people all the time who do, I think it's really less about, in my opinion, the size you are and more about what you're putting out there in the universe, right?
Thank you.
It's do you have energy? Do you have vitality? Are you interested in things? And isn't that what everyone wants from their partner, right? I guarantee you the men I talk to in divorce, if they have a woman who loves them, they, may have had a preference for skinny blondes at one time, but they're just happy to have a woman who's loving on them, right? And it's the same for women. I think that we aren't hung up so much on that physical body as we are with the connection to the other. especially midlife. Haven't we learned something, right, in all that time?
I wouldn't want to be 20 anymore and roll around and do what we were doing back then. I'm so happy of the things, the experiences I've had, the kids I've raised. And I'm like, okay, so what if there's a little belly fat or the butt is not as perky? It's just the way life goes. But the other thing too is, it's like you said, inspiration. If I just sit at home and let's use knitting again, another controversial thing, but I can't think of anything. Just I sit at home and knit, and I'm not interesting in any way, mentally stimulating to my partner. It's just dead. And I know you and your partner travel a lot, because I'm so happy we're friends on Instagram and on Facebook. Because I'm like, oh, where are they going? I haven't been there. Let's go.
And I do the same with you. That's right. And I think that's it. It's where do you have, the fit? And again, it doesn't mean any relationship is easy. And just because, I obviously divorced midlife, and some people probably watch this and say, well, of course, your, relationship's still relatively young, but every relationship is a challenge. Blending families is a challenge. But I think the challenge is to be interested in your partner and to keep them engaged with you. So I don't think there's a perfect process, but I do think each of us has a responsibility to hold up our end.
Yeah, because we do get complacent in relationships, especially I can see it with my clients who've been with their partners for 50, 60 years.
Absolutely.
I'm sure there's some boredom happening and some complacency. But as we're in this time of our life and as we're young and juicy, we have the opportunity. And when we talk about and put these conversations out there, hopefully a lot of women listen to this interview and go, scratch their head and say, hey, you know what? There is some truth to that. Maybe I can pick myself up and get Cherie's book and get some insights of what I could do better.
Right. Yes. And it's not that I have all the answers for clients, but I do try to frame the coaching support I give them on their values. So once I understand who they are and who they want to be, then I will help them become more productive in whatever ways they want to. And, that's really the beauty of the divorce journey. You have the opportunity to reinvent what maybe you weren't doing in your marriage for good reason or not so good reasons. You now have the opportunity to start again, to really begin again, and support your children at the same time if you have them. So it's really an opportunity for your children to renew their sense of you as a role model. And to see, if we teach our kids to be resilient, is there anything better in life? We certainly can't guarantee them that anything will always work out, right? They go to the best schools and have the best jobs, and then sometimes maybe they don't. So really, what do we want for them? It's to learn to cope when things aren't all right. And so if we can role model that for them as we go through a life transition, I think that is probably more important than, making sure they get into the right college, which seems to be the new hot trend in DC.
I hear. Well, and it's tough to pick the right college.
It is tough, but it's not, sort of your end of the world, right? It's their journey. And I talk to clients about that all the time, because one of the things I see, and I know you're interested in this as well, is that if we focus on our children to the exclusion of our partner, that can take a toll on marriage. So sometimes I think we need to step back and recognize the reasons we might be doing what we're doing and evaluate it and make some change.
Yeah. Do you coach any groups here in DC, support groups, Cherie?
So I do, and it's occasional and sporadic. But when I have a dynamic group of people that I know will be a fit that are clients, I love to put together support groups. What I mean by support is not a place to sit around and complain. We do that a little bit, but we try to keep it light and we try to keep it funny, right? And we can all have jokes about marriage, about middle age, about kids. But when it comes down to it, we are there to have tools to move forward. So what can we do to be our best selves in the world? And we have each other. So if we have a bad day, we can say, I tried this, it didn't work, and it sucked because I put myself out there. And somebody else can say, hey, Sue, I'm really glad you did that. I'm so proud of you. And I know what an effort it was because I've been there and I've done it. So I do see the value of a group of like-minded people supporting each other, I'm just very intentional that people not just complain and not take action. So yes, I do have a bias for support groups that is action-oriented.
I agree. And I just spoke about this a little bit in The Art of Pursuing Your Spark, is that we're action takers, and people in our private Facebook groups need to take more action and not just wait to be handed the information or read about it and think about it, but actually do something about it, comment or follow up on steps that we recommend and suggest, and at least give it a try.
Yes.
To see that. Which brings me to, so excited, Cherie's 5 tips to protect your marriage. This is going to be juicy. It's a juicy
Well, I'm certainly happy to share them, and I'd like to preface it with a short story because I didn't give you much of my journey of divorce, but
no, you didn't.
I feel close enough to you to, you and your 5 million viewers to do that. And one of the things my ex-husband occasionally says to me is, you help people divorce all over America. And I said, no, my goodness, no, all over the world. Don't limit me. But my point is that, if I'm a divorce expert, how can I possibly be a marriage expert, right? After all, I'm divorced. What do I know? But the truth is, I have learned a little bit in this journey. I've learned a lot from my clients. I've learned a lot from my own experience, and I do a lot of reading. So I don't say this lightly. I don't say it without study and thought. And I just know it. And so I want people to understand that I'm not considering myself the be all and end all when I talk about tips to protect your marriage. But I hear again and again from people getting a divorce what wasn't present. So if this can serve anyone, I'm happy to have it. And I would love to hear from people too about, did it make a difference to them? Because that's what I'm all about, is inspiring people to take action.
Yeah, because your training was too, you didn't quite mention in the beginning.
Yeah.
Your expertise comes also from
the training I did was very specific to divorce and coaching people in divorce. So it's a coaching certification, but in addition, it had a parent coordination path. So it was really about communication. And, I think that might be the most critical factor as you go through separation and divorce, is knowing what to communicate when and when to keep your mouth shut. If, all of us could figure that out, we'd be really well served. But yes, so I do have, and I also certainly use my legal training. I'm not acting as anyone's lawyer, but I come at this from an analytical framework. And that informs what I do because it keeps people organized. Yeah. And it allows them to plan their lives and create the lives they want post-divorce.
Yeah, that's good, because I'm getting right now my will and my living will and all this done, and it's amazing what somebody with a little bit of a legal background can tell you, or in this case, it's her expertise.
Yes,
you never thought of these things, so that's why I wanted to bring it up again. It's such a helpful combination.
Yes,
that you have the emotional, but you also have a legal training that will help and say, listen, about your bank accounts. Have you looked into this and that and the other?
That's exactly right. And is this the point in the podcast where you asked me to either keep you plugged in or unplug you if you're in the hospital at Heike? Is that what you were leading up to?
Yes.
I think you're going to be going far longer than most of us. So.
Oh, well, we're working on it. So without further ado, here is 5 tips to protect your marriage.
So I think the number one most, protective measure in marriage, and I say this a little bit more to women than to men, and I'm just going to put that out there because I've had friends that I say this to. You have to have sex with your husband, and you have to have sex with your wife. But I just think if there's one thing I can put out in the universe, it's women. If you don't have sex in your marriage, it's a big problem. You can justify it, you can explain it, and you may end up divorced. Doesn't mean you will, because maybe your husband's happy with that, maybe you're happy with it. But I see again and again where that exists, nobody talks about it, and then somebody steps out, right? And I think that sex is one of, again, like money, we don't want to talk about it, but you have to. And yes, it can become routine. It can become mundane. It can be one of the things that you think about not at all. But if you're not talking about it, even if you're not doing it, there's real trouble. So have the conversation and get support. There's lots of great support if you are having physical, emotional issues around sex.
Yeah, because a lot of us in menopause, we're dealing with the dryness and the pain during intercourse. And I haven't spoken about that
Yes.
openly either, but when you talk to your OBGYN about what help you can get and what there is, and it doesn't always have to be intercourse. The intimacy can be just like when you were a teenager and you're playing with your significant others.
That's right.
Once that falls by the wayside, it becomes just a partnership of raising the kids or living next to one another. So I think that's a huge point right there.
And so that's kind of my number one. And a close number two is know your finances and participate in them. And I say that, and it sounds like, well, gosh, that's just going to stir up trouble in my marriage. But in fact, most people don't want the burden of it all. Mm-hmm. And if they do have the burden of it all and they're dissatisfied, they may have more options than you do. So they control, and control should be shared when it comes to money. So even if you're not the primary breadwinner, and even if you are, you should participate in the money decisions. You should know where your money is, how it's spent, what your expenses are. It shouldn't be that one person is known as the saver and one person is known as the spender, and that one person's always trying to keep the other from spending, for example. That's an unhealthy dynamic that can then create other issues in the marriage. So I think it's important that you know your finances and that you participate in the process of understanding and even of paying the bills.
Yep. So that's number two, money. Number three.
So number three is an interesting one because I do think you have a zone of privacy in marriage, right? Everybody can have some privacy. If you don't, it can feel like you don't have boundaries in any way. And we all need those boundaries. But I do think it's important that you not keep secrets. That's, a personal opinion. But I do think that sometimes you need to have one person in your life with whom you'll share anything. So even if you had a best friend that said, I have this intimate thing. Can you not share it with your husband? And you might say, look, I'm not going to go out of my way to tell him, but we don't keep secrets. So if for some reason he were to ask me, he's the one person I would tell, or conversely, husband to wife.
This is such a good one. I didn't even think about it. But when we talked, I was like, oh my God, many women go, can you keep a secret?
Right.
Like, why would I keep a secret? If you're telling me, then you should feel free to tell everybody, not everybody, but the people that are involved with this.
That's it. And I think it's a way to keep people ashamed and scared and not empowered. So I really feel like if you want to keep your marriage, as rich as you can in intimacy and love, it's important that you have an understanding that if something significant happens, they're going to share it. Because if that starts not to happen, resentment builds, right? Fear builds, anxiety, all those things that come when we don't have that connection.
Yeah. Ooh, that was a good one. That was number 4. Juicy number 4. I'm into juicy today. I don't know.
Yeah, juicy's good. So number 4 is prioritize your spouse. And I know you've got those clients out there that are, been married 50 years. They're like, tell me, I've been doing this forever. And it doesn't mean that every day you wake up with a breakfast tray, in bed. Although just, in case my partner's watching, I would like that. Please. Yeah, feel free to serve.
Yeah.
But really what I mean is, take some time every day if you can, and weekly if you can, to make sure they know that you think they're important, so that you figure out how they know you think they're important. So even if you're doing all the grocery shopping and all their laundry and all the cooking, but you're just quietly resentful about that, that's not going to build that priority that we're talking about. The priority is making them know that you take care, and that in fact there are things you don't resent doing for them. Right?
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Because oftentimes you hear that too. It's like, oh God, I always have to do the dishes.
That's it. So instead of I always have to, you might even make that something that you talk about and say, I feel like I'm always doing the dishes, and I want you to know if that's important to you, I'm happy to do that. I would just like to feel valued a little bit for that. Simple conversation. In my experience, men are simpler that way than women, right? They actually like to be told, and they're not as good. Like with our girlfriends, we can have these subtle cues and hand signals and facial expressions, but with men, just get out there and tell them, right? And then they will listen. And then if they decide not to do those things, you can have a second conversation, right? But usually I find that in most marriages, if we talk about it, people are responsive.
Yeah. Ooh, number 5. We're rolling into the big 5.
The big 5. So my last one is really about how you create, the zones with your spouse. And I know you're so good at this with Jan, right? You guys have so many shared sporting interests, and you're really great at following his passions and he yours. But you probably also do things separately. And I find that's really important too, because you're not going to love everything the other person does, and they should feel still the opportunity to pursue it exists.
I also find that if you do everything together, you have nothing to talk about.
That's a really good point. That's right.
Really, if you see the same shows, if you do the same activities, you know what happened because you were always together.
That's right. And I find, keeping a little mystery alive is not such a bad thing.
Yeah, definitely. Mystery is good. So there you have it. Cherie's 5 tips. Aren't they juicy? I find them really juicy. So let me ask you, we're starting to wrap up. What are your future plans with Dear Divorce Coach and you? And
so I will continue to see clients. So I've had an office in Northwest DC, in Georgetown, DC, and I see clients here, and I love it. I coach people, I coach couples, I coach individuals, and I also do parent coordination work and help parents resolve their disputes. I have recently collaborated with Kentland Psychotherapy in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and I'm seeing clients there one afternoon and evening a week. So I will continue that. It really opens up my demographic, all new people, all new issues, and so fun for me to diversify. I love serving people online as well, so they can always find me at my website, which is deardivorcecoach.com. They email me. I'm happy to talk to people for about 20 minutes to figure out if what they need from me is something I'm able to give them. Mm-hmm. And then we'll take it from there. I really do find this is a passion as much as a profession, so I will continue writing and speaking, taking the opportunities to learn and to grow myself as I continue the coaching and parent coordination.
Yeah. So I'll put all these links that you just mentioned about your books and where the people can reach you in the show notes so they can link directly to you and find you. You're also on Facebook as Dear Divorce Coach?
That's right. I am Dear Divorce Coach, and on Twitter as Dear Divorce Team.
And Instagram?
And Instagram is Dear Divorce Coach as well.
So that's super easy to find. So you can find Cherie through all those links that I put into the show notes. And I want to thank Cherie so much for being here today and sharing her 5 juicy tips, among other things, with us in the show today. So thank you so much for being here, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Heike. It was a real privilege and pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. Bye. So what do you think? Wasn't this episode loaded with amazing tips that you can implement today? So many helpful pointers and many ideas to reflect on in your own relationship that may help prevent a separation or divorce. Let me know what you think about this episode and post your comments. The links to reach Cherie Morris and Dear Divorce Coach are in the show notes. Thanks for being here. It means a lot. And please give the show some love by leaving a review on iTunes. That's it for today. Until next time on the Pursue Your Spark podcast. Ciao.